In this lesson, we're going to learn how to solve quadratic inequalities. There are many similarities between quadratic equations and inequalities. You're going to be doing some factoring or the quadratic formula to find your zeros. And then you can use a lot of your knowledge about graphing to really get your solution. Okay, so I'm going to treat this as if it's an equation and find the zeros. So to do that, I'm going to factor. I gave you a quick reminder off on the side of the tic-tac-toe method, but hopefully you're really good at that here towards the end of Algebra 2. So this factors into x plus 9 times the quantity of x minus 4 is greater than 0. So if I were to treat this as if it were a function with two variables, the two places it would cross the x-axis would be x equals negative 9 or x equals positive 4. Okay? So on a number line, or on the coordinate plane, it's going to cross at negative 9 and positive 4. And you guys should know that this opens upward because the a value is positive. So I want to know, where is this greater than 0 is what this is saying. So where's it greater than 0? Well, here and here is where it's greater than 0 for a y value. So we're going to show you how to express that on a number line. So place my zeros on the number line. And I'm really asking, so where is my parabola, or where is this inequality greater than 0? Well, greater than 0 is where is it positive. So here's what you need to do. You need to pick one value, right? And the one value that you choose can be over here, where it's less than negative 9, between negative 9 and 4, or greater than 4. I always go, just make sure you don't choose negative 9 or 4, okay? It's got to be different than those two values. I like to choose 0 if it's not one of my zeros, because it's just easier to plug in. All right, so if I plug in 0, I'm going to plug it into where I factored. So if I pick 0, let's see, that would be 0 plus 9 times 0 minus 4. Is that greater than 0? Well, 0 plus 9 is 9, and 0 minus 4 is negative 4. That gives me negative 36. So in between, I know it's going to be negative. That means it has to be positive on the outer two. Okay, so your solution is always going to be going out, or it's going to be in between the two middle ones. Now, just to show you what I mean, because it makes more sense to choose another value the first time you see this. So I'm going to pick something over here, smaller than negative 9. I'm going to choose negative 10. So if I choose negative 10 and plug that in, negative 10 plus 9 is negative 1. And negative 10 plus, or minus 4 is negative 14. And I get a negative times a negative is a positive. So it's going to be positive to the left. Okay? So then if I choose something greater than 4 over here, hopefully you're guessing, well, it's got to be positive, but just to show you this one time, I'm going to choose 5. So 5 plus 9 is 14, and 5 minus 4 is 1, and 14 times 1 is positive 14, so it's positive to the right. So the question is, where is this inequality greater than 0? Well, I can see where it's positive. Now, it's not greater than or equal to 0, so I'm going to use an open circle, and I'm going to shade outward. And an open circle, and I shade to the left outward, okay? If it were greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, well, then I'm going to use a closed circle, just like I have all year. Okay, so the last thing I have to do is I need to write my solution as an inequality here to represent that number line. So I'm just going to give myself some space. My solution, hopefully you recognize this as an or. I'm going to say x is less than negative 9, or x is greater than positive 4. Just want to quickly remind you of how to write an inequality for some different scenarios. So in this one should look like an and to you. And this one is best written with the x in the middle. So you're saying that the smallest x will be is -4, which is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to +10. Okay. I like this one because to me it looks like x is right there in the middle in between two values. So on the other hand, if you had something like 5 and 47 over here, and I'm going to go a little, well, let's make it go out, and again I'm going to do a closed circle here and an open circle here. This one hopefully looks like an or to you, so this one you physically have to write the word or. This one should be x is less than or equal to 5 or x is greater than 47. All right, this next one is not in standard form, so just like with equations, I would rewrite this as 4x squared minus 49 is less than or equal to 0. I am going to again factor this, and hopefully you recognize this as my favorite factoring pattern. This is the dots. I'm going to take the square root of 4x squared. It's a perfect square. That's 2x. And the square root of 49 is 7. Okay, so they're both perfect squares, and since it's a difference, the pattern is one's a plus and the other is a minus. So my zeros, if this were a function in two variables, would be x equals -7/2 and x equals +7/2. Now, I suspect I may have lost one or two of you right there, so I'm just going to, over here on the side, remind you of where that came from. It comes from the zero product property, where I set each factor equal to 0, so I'd subtract 7 from each side, divide by 2, and I get x equals -7/2. Okay? So you're going to then take those values and put them on your number line. So -7/2 and +7/2. And I know that my answer will either be between these two values or going out. Okay, so how am I going to decide? Well, I'm going to choose a test point. And this is really saying right here, for what values is this less than or equal to 0? So I really want to know, well, where is it negative? Okay, so I'm going to choose something in between. I want to choose 0. So if I plug in 0 here, this would be 2 times 0 plus 7, and 2 times 0 minus 7. Okay, so 2 times 0 is 0, plus 7 is 7, and 2 times 0 minus 7 is -7. So a negative times a positive is a negative. So it's going to be negative in between, which means it has to be positive going outward. So the question here then is, so where is this less than or equal to 0? All right, by this symbol. So that's in between, but since it's equal, it's a closed circle because it's equal to it right there. So I'm going to shade this region in between. Now to connect it to graphing. Okay, so we've got two zeros where we know the parabola crosses. It's going to go open upward, so it's negative in between these two values is where it drops below the axis. So how are you going to write your solution? Well, your solution should be an and. I'm going to say that x is between -7/2, +7/2, written like this. -7/2 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 7/2. This next one, hopefully you notice that it's not in standard form, so I'm going to add 2x to put it in standard form on both sides, which gives me 3x squared minus 2x, plus 2x minus 5 is less than 0. Okay, so try factoring this. Why don't you pause and see if you can get the solution and hit play when you think you know it. So I'm assuming you've actually done that. I've set up my tic-tac-toe over on the left to help you if you need to look at how I factored this. Factors into 3x plus 5 times x minus 1 is less than 0. So if this were a function, the zeros of this function would be x equals -5/3 and x equals +1. I then take my number line and I put those zeros on the number line. So I put -5/3 and +1. Okay, so I know that it will be, my solution will either be between these two values or going out from these two values. So what am I looking for? If I look up here, I want to know where is it less than 0, meaning where is it negative. So again, I'm going to pick some value. I like 0, so let's say, yep, I can choose 0. That's going to be in between these two. If I plug 0 in, that would give me 3 times 0 plus 5. Now, you could plug it back into the original. Totally fine to do that. I just think it's easier when it's in factored form to do mental math. So 3 times 0 is 0 plus 5 is 5. And 0 minus 1 is -1. So 5 times -1 is a negative number. Yay! So it's negative in between the two, which means it's positive out here and out here. So I'm going to shade in my number line. I want to know where is it less than 0. So open circle on my zeros right here. And where is it less than? Well, where is it negative? It's negative in between. Make a connection to graphing because I think it's even easier to see this way. So I know it crosses at +1 and -5/3. Parabola opens upward again. And where is it negative? Well, it's negative in between these values. Okay, so our final step is let's write our solution. Our solution is going to be compound, open circles, so -5/3 is less than x, which is less than 1. As always, as you're working, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Happy to help.